Welcome back to our YouTube channel. This is Narayan Rao Kovar. In this video, I am going to explain what is the meaning of capital, the details of capital, what are the difference between capital and wealth, and types of capital. So now let us examine first what is the meaning of capital. Capital means produced means of production. Produced means of production. So, in other words, man made instruments of production. Capital is defined as produced means of production. In other words, capital is defined as man made instruments of production. So, capital refers to the all man made goods that are used for further production of wealth, that is known as capital. Capital refers to the all man-made goods that are used for further production of wealth is known as capital. For example, machine tools, dams, canals, factories, mission equipment, transport equipment, etc. Example for capital. This is the meaning of capital. Capital is a stock concept which yield periodical income. That income is called flow concept. So capital is a stock concept. Next, what are the differences between wealth and capital? Wealth refers to all those goods. Wealth refers to all those goods and human qualities which are useful in production, and can be passed on for value. That is called wealth. Once again, wealth refers to all those goods and human qualities which are used in production and can be passed on for value. This is known as wealth. Wealth means stock of assets held by an individual or organization which yield income, that is known as wealth. Next, capital refers to capital refers to a part of wealth of an individual or community which is used for further production of wealth, that is called capital. Capital refers to a part of wealth of an individual or community which is used further production of wealth is called capital. So, wealth is a wider concept, capital is a narrow concept. For example, car for personal use is called wealth. Car for personal use is called wealth. Car for business use, that is called capital. Next, capital is not a primary or original factors of production. Primary and original factors of production are land and labor. Land and labor are original and primary factors of production, but capital is not a primary or original factor. It is a produced factors of production. Capital is a produced factors of production. It has been produced by man by working with nature. It has been produced by man with his by working with nature. That is called capital. Capital is a passive factor. Capital is a passive factor. So it does not produce anything on its own. That is called capital. So this is something the information regarding the full details of the meaning of capital and difference between wealth and capital. So types of capital. Types of capital. So the types of capital, one is fixed capital. One is fixed capital. It renders a series of services. It gives a series of services over a period of time and it exists in a durable shape. Capital exists in a durable shape and it renders a series of services over a period that is known as fixed capital. That is known as fixed capital. Next, second one is circulating capital, also called working capital. Circulating capital means not available for further use, not available for further use, and it used in single use in production, single use in production. For example, raw material. For example, fuel. For example, seeds. Example for circulating capital. Next. Third one is real capital. Real capital in terms of physical goods. Real capital refers to the in terms of physical goods such as buildings, plants, machinery, factory buildings, etc. Fourth one is human capital. Human capital refers to the human skills and ability, dexterity, strength and stamina, experience, knowledge, etc. That is called human capital. Human capital means human skills and ability, capacity, strength and stamina, dexterity, experience, knowledge, etc. Next, fifth one, tangible capital. Tangible capital. Tangible means visible, that is perceived by senses, that is perceived by senses. Next, sixth one is intangible capital. Intangible capital. Intangible capital refers to the certain rights and benefits. Certain rights and benefits cannot be perceived by senses. Intangible capital cannot be perceived by senses. For example, copyrights, patent rights, trademark, and goodwill, etc. etc. That is called best example for intangible capital. Next, so individual capital. Capital belongs to individual. That is personal property owned by an individual or a group of individual. That is called individual capital. Capital belongs to person. Capital belongs to particular person. That is personal property owned by an individual or a group of individual. That is called individual capital. Next, social capital. Social capital refers to the capital belongs to the society. Capital belongs to society. That means belongs to the society as a whole in the form of roads and buildings. Roads, buildings, reading rooms, libraries, etc. This property that capital belongs to society. That is known as social capital. Social capital. Next, another one is sunk or specific capital. Sunk capital or specific capital. So, sunk or specific capital is used only for a particular purpose, only for a specific purpose. That is called sunk capital or specific capital. For example, railway engines are available particularly to carry the remaining bogies. That is called particular purpose. That is established for, that is arranged for only particular purpose to carry the remaining bogies. That is called railway engine. And tenth one is floating capital, floating capital or non-specific capital, floating capital or non-specific capital. So floating capital or non-specific capital are used for different purposes, multiple purposes, or several purposes. That capital is called floating or non-specific capital. For example, coal, it has several uses. For example, petrol, it has several uses. For example, money, it can be used for several purposes. So, that is used for different purposes. That capital is known as floating capital or non specific capital. This is something the information regarding the meaning of capital, difference between wealth and capital, and various types of capital. Thank you for watching. Like, share, subscribe, and comment.